And a good morning to all of those plow guys. I should say people, right? There might be some women out plowing this morning.
Sure.
Maybe a couple of inches, an inch to a couple of inches, depending on where you are. But to the west, we're looking at, if you're planning to fly out of Syracuse today, Syracuse area, Oswego, with a winter storm warning in effect, they're looking at 5 to 10 inches today before this is all done. Joe Lowe, out on the road. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Bill. I will tell you, it is a little bit slick in spots. So, hey, don't forget it was winter just a few months back, and we still should know how to drive. So keep up the pace, and if you can't, then pull over and let somebody pass you. Thank you.
It's a wonder he didn't say, if you can't, just pull over and let me drive by, please.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to call you, and I keep forgetting.
Okay.
Not that I keep forgetting, is I keep getting distracted. But I was in preliminary talks with Fred Matt. Actually, we haven't talked in quite a while.
Right.
And I wanted to give you an update. I had an idea. It came to me the other day, an idea for another Stein. So I text messaged him, and he thought it was a good idea, and he said we should get together. Really should. And I said, yeah, we should, because I really I want to bring back our relationship, because, my love of Utica Club will never die. But
well, and if we can, before you get into that, your reason that you guys had the fallout.
Was it ever really in turmoil?
It was. No, he got upset that they pulled the shandy.
And the trolley was the big thing.
And the trolley.
Thanks for reminding him of the shandy.
They just dismantled the trolley.
Yeah, a piece of his childhood.
Right.
You know what's
taken
great,
apart.
though, Bill, is that I was told by Fred that the shandy will return this summer.
Wow. Well, that's got to make you feel pretty good.
It does. That got me thinking, if he can warm up a little bit, I can warm up a little bit, and maybe we could get together again,
Well, so tell me the idea that you have on a Stein. What are you thinking about?
Well, my new Stein idea would be the Barber Stein. However, I have a couple of different names, because you know me, I'm big on the names. Brewski, Hops the Frog, Barley the Bear. But I think either Crew Cut or Flat Top the Barber.
I like it.
Okay, do you think you should be sharing this right now? You don't have a patent. You haven't discussed anything yet. I'm just nervous for you.
I don't get anything out of it, Andrew, except for the joy and happiness and the smiles that Utica Club brings to people.
Have you ever suggested a Stein that actually came to fruition?
Brewski is mine.
That's right, the skiing one.
And Hops the Frog and Barley the Bear.
Those are my
ideas.
Is there a?
Are they really?
Yes, I talked to him at the Christmas party about those two.
Oh, okay. So he doesn't remember, but it was your idea. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me ask you this: has there ever been a Frankenstein for Halloween?
I know there's been a Dracula. But not a. I don't think there's been. Wait, there might have been a Frankenstein.
Yeah, there's got to have been, because that's the obvious one, right?
I even thought Bruce Springsteen would be kind of.
Oh, I like that too. Yeah,
a rocker.
Yeah,
a rocker.
The boss.
They just canceled Harvey Weinstein. That's been canceled.
Ooh.
Yep, done.
And
done.
no Rabbi Stein. No.
All righty, Joe. All right, listen. You know what? To be honest with you, we had all these delays yesterday. We still have some delays this morning. But the roads, are, at least in the valleys, are worse today than they were yesterday. There's snow on the roads this morning and slush and that sort of thing. So you do have to be careful out there.
Well, I do know I was trail braking this morning on the way to CrossFit. But other than that,
All right.
The roads now look like they've been plowed, and I'm actually following a plow truck right up Walker Road now. So.
All right, Joseph, you have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. And drive safe out there and get out of my way. Thank you.
Okay, there he goes.
He's right, though. People forget how to drive. And I understand you want to take it easy. You don't want to push it and go, I shouldn't have been doing 40. I should have been doing 20. I totally get that. But, God, get out of the way. It's not that bad out today. It's really not. It's the first time we've had snow on the ground. But
it is. But the roads, you could come into an area where the roads are covered.
Yes.
And slushy and slippery, and that could send you off the deep end, right? I want to get into the NY22 in a little bit and give you exactly what went down yesterday. They were in court yesterday, which prevented any counting. So counting will get underway today, at least in, I think, 3 or 4 counties in the NY22. Tomorrow, some will start, and others, we don't know when they're going to start. But to give you an idea what came out of the courts yesterday, just to give you an idea, the court is requiring that all of the votes, all of the ballots be certified. I believe the word is certified. I'll double check on that. By December 3rd. Does that possibly mean that we might not know the official winner of the 22nd Congressional District until December 3rd? It's possible. It's also possible that enough votes get counted where we get to a certain point and they can declare a winner. That is possible as well. But December 3rd is their deadline. We were hoping we'd know something before Thanksgiving, which is a week and a day from today. Standing by right now, Rachel Sutherland, staying with the House. House Republicans have a task to deal with today, right?
That's right. They're going to choose their leadership. Of course, they already have leadership in the majority, but this will be for the minority. It's expected that House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy probably will send off a challenge for Minority Leader from Congressman Jim Jordan, who is part of the Freedom Caucus, kind of a hard right type of group, a voting bloc there in the House. There are some who say, yeah, give Jim Jordan a chance because he's a little different. But when it comes to House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, he's establishment, but at the same time, he generally works with President Trump pretty well. So you see that race happening. The rest of them are less exciting in that Steve Scalise, who's currently Majority Whip, is running unopposed for Minority Whip. You'll remember he was gravely injured in that congressional baseball practice shooting last year. And then Wyoming Republican Liz Cheney is also running unopposed for House GOP conference chair. So you could see that there. It just doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of knockdown, drag-out fighting, except for maybe when it comes to Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. When will they be making a decision on Nancy Pelosi is the big question.
I would imagine when the 116th Congress is seated in January. Right now, it wouldn't make sense.
Considering, especially, there's all those freshmen elect Congress people who ran against Nancy Pelosi. Some of them don't even have their races decided as of yet.
That's right. Oh, some of them, right, they're still out there. So you can't, it'd be hard to, you're right, to elect leadership. Yeah, when they're seated in January, they'll go ahead and do that. Right now, I mean, Republicans basically know who they're going to, I guess there's a few undecided races, but how it's going to look, the landscape in January.
Still very interesting. Still races that are too close to call. It's really quite something. It does show, Rachel, how really narrowly divided we are across the country.
No doubt about it. The situation in Florida has been really compelling. Of course, yesterday, Martha McSally conceded to her Democratic Kirsten Sinema, who will come to Washington as the first woman to represent Arizona. And it's a different makeup. It's interesting because I believe there's been upwards of 120-plus women elected to Congress. That's a definite new level, a record, I should say.
Rachel, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Rachel Sutherland, Fox News. I'll tell you that Anthony Brindisi, you know where he's going to be. He'll be with Claudia Tenney today. Who knows what could happen then? Brindisi's going to be in Washington. And, of course, Congress is back, the lame duck Congress. But Anthony Brindisi plans to show up today at the Capitol to start a 2-week orientation for new members of Congress, even though the election for the district has not officially been decided. What Brindisi is saying is that despite the fact that while he has declared victory, despite the fact that it's not official, he said that he wants to join the group of about 85 new House members in this week's orientation session in Washington so that he can quickly set up a Capitol office. If he's declared the winner in the election, new members will be sworn into office on January 3rd. So they could meet each other crossing in the hallways. It's possible. Meanwhile, yesterday, if you recall, Claudia Tenney came out with some harsh words for Anthony Brindisi, saying that he was trying to get attorneys to steal the election. It sounded like the same rhetoric coming out of Florida. But after court proceedings yesterday, where apparently they go through everything, who can be in the room? So this was in court yesterday in Rome. Who can be in the room? Who has to be in the room? If there are, let's say, and remember, each county has a different board of elections. Each of these boards of election have to create this procedure. Now, they might have one table where they're counting ballots. There might be 2 or 3 tables. So it was determined that if there's 2 tables, then there's a Tenney person and a Brindisi person at each table. So it's all these little details that were worked out yesterday. But finally, the ruling came from Judge Patrick McCray that they can move forward, and counting will begin this morning. In Oneida County, they'll start counting at 9:30. In Herkimer County, they'll begin at 10 a.m. Broome, Cortland, and Madison counties will begin at 9 a.m. Oswego County will begin today at 9:30. Shenango County has not determined the time yet, but they're not going to start until tomorrow or Friday. And we have no idea what Tioga is going to do as of right now. So this process could go on. And as I said, the judge made the ruling. I want to see what the official rule was on December 3rd. The deadline where everything has to basically be complete is December 3rd. I can't really find where I pulled that note down. But either way, they have until December 3rd. This could stretch into a couple of weeks from now. Are we ready to wait that long?
No. Hopefully, whoever wins will, and I'm sure they will, leak out some information. Not that, and they're not bound
unless it's close. Unless it's so close that you can't call it. I mean, that would mean Claudia Tenney has to make up some votes. She's about almost 1,300 votes behind here. But yeah, I guess we might find something out beforehand. Maybe somebody concedes. Maybe you can call the race prior based on the number of votes that comes in. Crazy though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. This is all over the country. Stuff like this. It is really something. We'll talk to Luke Perry on the recount, on the procedure, on everything that's going on. Luke Perry from Utica College, who's been awesome in this NY22. He's had some great interviews, some great columns, and some great opinion. Also, later on this morning, Ryan Nobles. Meanwhile, the president is calling for, in the Senate race in Florida, the president is calling for the Democrat to concede. Stop with the fraud. Concede. This is all coming. I'm sorry. This is coming from the president of the United States. It's crazy.
They've got an issue down there, though, don't they?
There is an issue, but you have attorneys. You have the courts are involved. There's absolutely no evidence of fraud. It's crazy. I get it. But even in this race, when Tenney's campaign came out and said he's trying to steal the race with attorneys. Now, I'm confident that her attorneys and his attorneys and the boards of election around the district are going to do a really thorough job of making sure that every vote gets counted and the actual winner is named. I feel better this way than allowing those county officials to do it on their own, wouldn't you? Here and in Florida. But apparently it's easy to yell out the word fraud and stealing the election because that's what's going on.
That's what they said about Trump.
Let's see. What else did I? Oh, and Michael says, talking about Joe Lode and his Stein. I'll never forget listening on the radio when Nick Matt was in the studio and you revealed that Joe Lode was here, and Nick Matt was like, "Oh, great."
That was great.
One of the hallmark days here on WIBX.
Never forget that moment. It also says it's funny that Trump is complaining about voter fraud when the complaint was about Trump when he got elected was over voter fraud, right? It's kind of the bit of a irony here. All right, it's a little bit on the slick side out there this morning, depending on where you are. We have 3 delays this morning. Fort Plains Central School, Little Falls City Schools, and Mohawk Valley Christian Academy are each on a 2-hour delay. Each of those schools, by the way, is to the east. I said earlier, if you're traveling to the west, going out Syracuse way, it's going to be nasty there as well. They're calling for 5 to 10 inches in Syracuse and Oswego. 6:31. It's First News Keeler in the morning, Wednesday, middle of the week at WIBX. Snow out there, not all that bad, but the news from Rachel is that as we go into the weekend, Friday and Saturday, a significant snowfall is possible. It does seem like winter is here. Hope you're prepared. Came pretty quickly, didn't Didn't
it absolutely
it just kind of happened.
I mean, we're talking about how early Thanksgiving is this year, and we're still a week away from Thanksgiving, and we're getting snow.
Of course, it's typical, right? Some years you can remember years where it might be in November and December up in the 60s. Other years, you remember snow on Halloween and Thanksgiving. So this looks like it's one of those years. Although all of the predictors have been saying a much warmer winter than normal.
Yeah, get it all out of the way now, and then it's going to be warm the rest of the way. I mean, that one December, that Christmas Day was like 75 a couple years ago.
Although this could also be they're wrong.
Yeah,
and it turns out to be a snowier than usual winter. Who knows? Monica Lewinsky. Apparently, this documentary series is going to be on A&E. It's 6 parts, and it starts Sunday. Very exciting. You'll be able to watch it during Thanksgiving weekend.
We need 6 parts for her role in American history?
Apparently. In the trailer, Monica Lewinsky breaks down when she talks about the investigation, said she thought about jumping out of a window, and said she was in love with Bill Clinton. There's my clip. This isn't a documentary she's just participating in. This is a documentary about her and the affair. They're calling it the Clinton Affair. And wow. I can't imagine Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton are going to participate.
In fairness, I mean, with The Making a Murderer, there's 2 seasons on one guy in his case. So
you're right. Yeah.
I think there could be a 6-part documentary on this one thing.
Yeah, that sounded obviously really emotional. I do kind of feel bad for her, but
you do.
In that moment, I mean, anytime someone's saying I want to jump out of a window to end my life, I do feel bad for them. Yeah,
that's bad. Monday Night Football was supposed to be in Mexico City next week. It's not going to be. 2 teams with a 9-1 record, the Chiefs and Rams, and tickets sold out in record time. There's only one problem: the players, the coaches, even officials saying the field is horrible. So the NFL has moved the game to the L.A. Coliseum. Here they are talking about the deal.
If you were to look at Estadio Azteca right now, you would think that it is nowhere close to being ready for a football game. You know, it's not a football field, and there have been several events at Estadio Azteca that have chewed up this field. That if you see a sky view right now, or a bird's eye view, it looks unplayable for a Pee Wee football game, much less an NFL game.
To me, I think this is an absolute joke. You mentioned Pee Wee football. To be honest with you, I coach Pee Wee football. We played on a better surface. High school games around the country are played on a better surface. We're talking about the grass being a mess in some stadium in Mexico City.
They say if you're looking to get ready for Thanksgiving dinner, the worst day to shop for Thanksgiving dinner is
Thanksgiving.
Well,
no, it's like this Friday or Saturday.
Nobody would be open on that day. Maybe some convenience stores. The thought would be that
get that microwavable turkey, please.
The thought would be that Wednesday would be the bad day. In reality, Wednesday might not be so great because of the stock might be a little bit low. But they say Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, is the worst because everybody assumes the crowds will be out Wednesday, and they all go out on Tuesday. That's Pabst Blue Ribbon beer.
PBR.
Could soon be extinct.
No.
Pabst has a contract where Miller Coors brews, packages, and ships their beer because they're too small to do it themselves. But the deal expires in 2020, and Miller Coors is tripling the cost so they can go after PBR customers. If the Pabst lawsuit over it fails, this would be the end. Who knows? Maybe this would be an opportunity for the Mats to step in and brew and bottle Pabst
as
Blue
they
Ribbon.
should. I mean, have you ever had a good old PBR straight from Wisconsin?
Yeah, and you remember that scene where Dennis Hopper was so upset over PBR? Remember?
And don't you forget it.
What else stupid? What other stupid things do I have here today? How about? Have they? I know the Rockefeller tree has arrived. Doesn't NBC do some big celebration where people come in and sing and dance, and people be parking in Alec Baldwin's spot and all sorts of stuff?
They'll be punching people.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
It's an MMA fight.
And I'll give you one more idiotic story. You can now get Christmas wrapping paper that smells like sausage. It's from Jimmy Dean.
Ooh.
You have to go to JimmyDeanGiftExchange.com, submit a photo of you cooking one of their sausage recipes, and choose the wrapping paper that smells like sausage as your free gift. Yeah, and mouth-blown brass glory. Is that what? Yeah. That's from Jimmy Dean. What else here this morning beyond the weather that we're dealing with? Did you see that Allegiant has Allegiant Air out of Syracuse is now offering nonstop flights from Syracuse to Sarasota for those that like to travel down south. Pretty good. Wegmans was named the number one once again. Isn't it this way every time for employees? This is number one on the list of best places in America to work. This in retail. Wegmans comes in at number one. A Rochester-based grocery store captured the top spot in the survey conducted by Fortune and its partner Great Place to Work. The annual survey included feedback from 631,000 retail employees across the United States. Wegmans has 127 locations, none of them here. And you hear from people who have been in communities where there are Wegmans that always complain about that. But they have been named best place where you can build a career and provided mentors and tools for success. Wegmans is number one.
Yes.
And so when you went to college, you had a Wegmans out in Syracuse.
Yeah, right on Erie Boulevard, right off Erie Boulevard, yeah.
So you are one of those that says, oh, we love Wegmans.
I actually went to, when I was in Massachusetts for the game, staying with my cousins, there was this big, massive Wegmans that they built attached to a mall, and it had an escalator, and it was the coolest thing. I get excited about the littlest things. There was an escalator for your cart. So then you get on the escalator, you push the cart next to you, and it carries your cart up.
You know,
it's like the coolest thing ever.
I am surprised by some of those on the list of the best places to work.
Yeah, Wegmans always at the top, though.
Wegmans is at the top. Publix Supermarkets is number 2. CarMax is number 3. And as you get down the list, it really surprises me. You know those convenience stores? You see them down as you get down towards Little Falls and to the east. Cumberland Farms. I don't know that there's any out here. But if you go down into Fort Plain, Johnstown, Gloversville, down to that area, there are a lot of Cumberland Farms. Cumberland Farms is number 6 on the list.
Really?
I might have to make a trip down or up.
Well, they didn't say it was the best
is it
consumer
the gas,
experience.
Is it the convenience store, or is it the don't they make Christmas type sausages or something?
Cheese, yeah.
Well, they're saying that's a great place to work. Maybe that's not the same as the convenience store. Also on the list, number 10, best places to work for a career, Foot Locker.
Oh, I thought you were going to say WIBX. Sorry.
No, that's number 8 million.
Yeah, we're a little bit further down on the list.
This is a wonderful place. Old Navy is number 14.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you ever run into employees of these places and they're like, "Oh my God,
I love it.
It's the greatest thing ever."
I have a locker and feet. I love Foot Locker.
I guess work is work. So at some point you're like, it's work.
Here's Tom in Little Falls. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Bill.
You're up bright and early
I
today.
just turned the radio on and heard you speaking of Wegmans. I have a nephew. When he was being born, something went wrong, and he has limited use of one of his arms, and he has slurred speech. He works for Wegmans in New Jersey, and he is very well treated, and he just loves it. And it's, I keep hearing it like you're saying. I keep hearing how well Wegmans takes care of his people, and I can verify. Because I know, I talked to my nephew. When I lived closer to him, we'd get out and throw the football around, and he would catch it with one arm because he couldn't use the other arm.
Wow!
But he works there, and he loves it. And everything I hear about Wegmans is that they do treat their people well. Yeah. So I figured I'd throw in my little 2 cents there.
Tom, do you have a Cumberland Farms in Little Falls?
No. Actually, they have withdrawn some of theirs. There used to be one in St. Johnsville. Yeah. It's not there anymore.
Oh.
It's some other company. There used to be one in Nelliston. It was about, one of the very few stores in Nelliston. That also is no longer a Cumberland Farms. The closest to me is in Fonda.
Okay, well, again,
and when I have to work down the valley, I often stop in there to get a beverage or something to munch on.
That is the gas station grocery store type convenience store. And anyway, in the top 10 list of places to work in retail and for careers, it's pretty wild.
Well, the people that I see in the stores, they're usually smiling and doing well, and they do take good care of you in the store.
All right, nothing like a good smile.
There you go.
Thank you, Tom.
Right. Bye.
Tom in Little Falls. And how about the closure of the New Era plant in Derby, which is out near Buffalo? New Era Stadium, that's Rich Stadium, right? New Era. They make the hats, the New Era hats. So they apparently, yesterday the announcement came, and I'm not sure if they maybe knew in advance, but that they're planning to close its operation in Derby, New York in March. The plant's 219 workers and officials from the union that represents most of them reported it yesterday. And that means 219 workers will be out of work. It's going to affect everybody, said one worker. Employees were walking out of the plant yesterday crying because they will be out of a job. The company, which employs 1,400 people globally and has revenues of about $750 million, produces 65 million caps and hats each year. Most are made in China. Vietnam, Bangladesh, Haiti, where New Era purchases the headwear from third-party manufacturers. But they do also have a plant in Buffalo, and there's 337 people that work there. That plant will not be affected. So how do we compete against these third-world countries that pay their people peanuts so that you only have to spend $60 on a baseball cap?
Well,
or whatever. But some of these caps are, you get a fitted cap, it's expensive.
So it's you're right. It's
Think
unbelievable.
Of the profit that's being made there.
When I was a kid, everyone I knew was a Yankees fan. A fitted Yankees cap, everyone wore one. It was $20. Okay, they're like $50 now. You're $60 depending on the style or whatever.
Nothing's
it's unbelievable.
Changed. The material really hasn't. I mean, they've advanced it a little bit, but the material hasn't changed much.
They have moved the ball forward a little bit. But to your point, what are they paying per hat if they're being made in China, Bangladesh?
Think about it. Yeah.
$3 at the most?
They might be making $3 in a month. I mean, they make peanuts for salaries. So how do we compete with that?
Is that the reason they're saying they're moving the operation?
They're not saying, but you can assume that's probably has something to do with it. Michael says on the Jimmy Dean wrapping paper that smells like sausage. Be careful if you have a dog. Putting that under the tree. Next morning you wake up and everything's eaten up.
That's
right?
a great point.
Just think about that. Anyway, hold on tight. It's a little slick out there. Ed Welch on gas prices. We're going to speak with him from AAA coming up in just a few minutes. And if you've noticed, they're inching downward, which is a pretty good thing. We'll get to it coming up at WIBX. Ed Welch standing by right now from AAA, who is also the host of WIBX's Auto Talk. And let's talk auto. Ed Welch, gas prices seem to be inching downward.
Well, good morning, Bill. And yes, we can give a little thanks here for some lower gas prices. They've been inching downward. What's interesting is they have not fallen at the rate they should have fell. We normally would see a 25 cent drop in October, and the reason that didn't happen was the perceived oil embargoes against Iran. And that got the market speculators saying, hey, we're going to have a bit of an oil shortage.
Yeah.
We all need to remember that Venezuela is totally off the table right now. They're not even producing. So the market looked at that and said, well, once the administration puts those hefty embargoes on Iran, we're going to have a problem. Well, of course, what they didn't count on was the president granting waivers to about 8 countries. And, of course, for the next 6 months, there is no Iranian embargo on the big users, which would be India, China, and a few other countries. So
right.
Now all of a sudden the oil market is sitting there with a whole bunch of oil. Supply is up, demand is down. It's seasonal. The refineries have just finished all their maintenance. They're making winter gas, which is also cheaper to make. and basically the price has dropped like a rock. We're at $59 a barrel yesterday. 3 weeks ago, it was at $70 a barrel. So you can see what has happened. The rug's been pulled out from under them momentarily anyways.
So how low do you think the prices will go?
Well, I think we're going to get down another 10 or 12 cents a gallon easily. We may get, again, it's hard to totally speculate, but I think that we're going to be down into the early 270s before the end of the year. OPEC met on Sunday, and they've got another meeting scheduled in Vienna on December 5th. On Sunday, the Saudis were pretty unhappy about what has transpired, and they haven't come right out and said they're going to cut production. But you may recall earlier this year, they were basically begged to increase production, put the pressure on Iran, and of course that's all gone down the tubes for the moment. So I think there's going to be a cut. The Saudis would like to cut production to balance the market. What they don't want to have happen is what happened in 2014 when we were dropping like a rock, and you may recall we were paying around $2.23, $2.25 a gallon. There's places in the country that are under $2 a gallon, and those guys lost their shirts. So they don't want that to happen again. So I'm willing to bet on December 5th when they meet again, the Saudis going to cut production. What's really interesting, Bill, is that a lot of the other countries aren't going to stay in lockstep with the Saudis. The Russians and some other oil producers might say, you know what, we're not going to do that. And of course, the wild card now is the United States production, which wasn't really an issue a few years ago, but now we're producing an awful lot of oil. So we may have a big effect here on the market in the next 6 months.
So where are we right now? Where are gas prices right now?
Today, I put a release out yesterday. We're at $2.87. It dropped to $2.86 this morning.
Wow.
But a year ago, and we're happy about this, and like I said, I'm thankful that it's going down. But a year ago, we were paying $2.65. So comparatively, we're still paying a whole lot more than we were a year ago.
And tell me your thoughts on just our region. So if you're to the south, down Route 20 area, if you're into the North Country, if you're in the Rome Valley area, Utica or the Valley, who has the better gas prices?
I'll give you Herkimer County right now is at $2.93. That's this morning's price, okay?
That's high.
So it is high. And Herkimer, for some reason, has been going higher than us over the past few months. If you want to go to Onondaga County this morning, going to Syracuse, and it's $2.74 is the average price for Onondaga County. Madison County this morning is at $2.82. Otsego County, which you get down towards Oneonta and Cooperstown, is $2.93 a gallon.
Wow.
And if you want to go to Hamilton County, it's $3.03. It went up. So the interesting part is there's still parts of the state, and right next to it, for example, Fulton County is at $2.86. So it's kind of if you look at the map of New York State county-wide, from a county standpoint, the cluster around Onondaga County, Cayuga County, Tompkins County, those are all lower. Seneca County, $2.77 to $2.80. We're kind of in the middle here in Oneida County. Obviously, there's other places that have good prices, like Saratoga County at $2.71 this morning. And you get down to the city, Westchester's at $3.11. So it depends on where you are.
Yeah. Now, is it beneficial to? I mean, we're not really thinking about gas prices right now. It's funny when they go up, all of a sudden people they're driving out of their way to get to save a couple of pennies. But is it worth it to have a BJ's membership, or is it worth it to head out towards the casino and use the Oneida Nation gas stations?
It all depends where you live. For example, if you live in Utica, and I don't want to just give BJ's a shameless plug, but if you're living on the north side of town, why wouldn't you do that so you can consistently buy your gas cheaper? That's really the goal here, is if you can consistently buy gas cheaper, then you're going to save some money. My rule of thumb is if you've got to drive more than 10 miles to save gas, you're not going to save any gas.
Right.
So if your car gets 20 miles to the gallon, do the math. You're going to burn half a gallon of gas to get there and half a gallon of gas to come back. Well, at $2.85 a gallon, how much are you going to buy?
You're right.
You're going to buy 10, 12, 15 gallons? But if you live where you could take advantage of that almost every day without going out of your way, then it's 100% worth it.
Sure. All right, very interesting. Of course, every Saturday morning on WIBX is Auto Talk with Ed Welch. We appreciate it, as
thanks
always.
For having me on this morning, Bill, and we'll see everybody Saturday. We got a nice broadcast on Saturday morning to help the food bank.
Yes, that's really, really big.
We will be there. Ed will be there Saturday from 8 to 10. And, of course, it's for the Food Bank of Central New York. And we are trying to raise money for the holiday season.
Yeah, and Jeff will be there with me. I'm looking forward to having people stop by and say hi. And certainly to help the food bank out. It's an absolutely great cause, and there's a lot of needy people this time of year.
Ed Welch, thanks so much. We appreciate what you do.
Thanks, Bill. Have a great day.
You too.
I should note it's
Bye-bye.
Price Chopper, New Hartford.
Price Chopper in New Hartford is where you'll be. Professor of Government and Politics is Luke Perry. He is the author of Utica College Center of Public Affairs and Election Research, NY22 Minute. When we spoke to him right after Election Day, the thought was, boy, it's all over. Well, we might not know the final results until early December. Now, chances are we're going to hear earlier than that, but a judge has set a deadline for all the counties to have everything certified and in by December 3rd in the race between Tenney and Brindisi. We'll talk to Luke Perry next on WIBX. Luke Perry, a tenured professor and chair of the Department of Government and Politics at Utica College, a graduate fellow at the University of Massachusetts, where he earned an MA and PhD in political science. His expertise is American politics, specifically NY22. Luke Perry, this is not going to end anytime soon.
Doesn't look like it. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing? So yesterday, the two sides met, and Brindisi and Tenney's sides, the attorneys, and it's been ruled that the counting can begin today.
Yeah, so, it looks like there's about 15,000 to 17,000 ballots outstanding that still need to be counted. The big question is what that's going to mean for the outcome. And I think it's going to be difficult for Representative Tenney to make up the difference. She won in 2016 with 46% of the vote. On Election Day, she got 48% of the vote. If there's, let's say, 15,000 votes, she's going to need about 55% to make up the current deficit. So based on past performance, it's unlikely that's going to happen, but certainly it's possible.
So why I really have a question, and this is something that Democrats do and Republicans do. So the election is over. All ballots have been cast. And why still the negative campaigning? I mean, you look at Rick Scott in Florida. They're stealing the election. This is fraud. But the attorneys are all involved. And now there's less of a chance of any monkey business going on now that both sides have their attorneys in place and the courts will make any difficult decisions. Same thing up here. The Tenney camp was criticizing Brindisi, saying your lead is eroding and now you're trying to steal the election by going to attorneys. What's your take on it? Why, number one, are we still campaigning negatively? And number two, aren't we in a better place when both sides have their attorneys there and a court is involved?
That would be a good question for the Tenney campaign. I'm not sure what motivated that statement. I guess what I could add from a political science perspective is that candidates and representatives are trying to claim credit and deflect blame, and the election is not in Tenney's favor at this point, so that might be an effort to try to deflect some of the blame of the outcome. But certainly that's something that she could speak to better than I.
Have you watched any of the talk about Nancy Pelosi? Of course, Anthony Brindisi ran on a platform that stated unequivocally that he would not be supporting Pelosi as majority leader. And it doesn't look like really, though, that there's anybody out there at this point that's going to give her much of a challenge. Do you think?
No, I think she'll be elected. I think he will not support her. It would be a big mistake on his part to support her now during the campaign, saying that he would not. I anticipate Pelosi will be elected. I don't think she's going to serve as speaker that long. She's already talked about a transition plan, and I think part of her pitch to Democrats now is, this is what I've done throughout my career. I want to do this one more time. And I'll do it for X amount of time, and then these people will be in line to replace me. I suspect that type of conversation is happening behind the scenes.
And she does seem to have something to run on, and that is that just look at my results here in this election, which seem to be getting a little bit better with every recount.
Well, Pelosi is a historically significant figure, being the first woman Speaker of the House. She's worked hard on Democrats' behalf for many years and spent countless hours, not only as a legislative tactician, but as a valued fundraiser. So I think those two things are certainly working in her favor. She's a senior member in the caucus. So, it's not unusual for her to be in a leadership position at this point. But I also think she realizes that her time is limited.
Can you talk a bit about the process and what it all means? So it was Brindisi's campaign that asked for the ballots to be impounded, which brings in the sheriff's department. Then the next step was the court proceeding. They laid out the guidelines. Can you explain how this process is going to work at each individual board of election?
Well, I think what we'll see is county by county, the remaining votes, the absentee ballots, affidavit ballots, these types of things will be counted. And per court order, all the materials involved in that will be under protection of law enforcement, just to make sure that nothing happens to tamper with the ballots or any related election records. So anytime in each county, my understanding is that when these materials are accessed, you have to have a member of each political party on behalf of the campaign, as well as a law enforcement official. So I think this is designed to maintain the integrity of the election system. It's always important, but it's particularly important in a close election. And one thing I would point out, I think one thing this episode helps illustrate is that New York does not do a good job for providing opportunities for people to vote other than Election Day. We're not one of the leading states in what we call non-traditional voting. So I think states that have early voting, or I lived in Oregon for a while, you vote by mail. That I know it's a whole debate in itself, but I think at this particular moment, if you had those types of systems in place, it makes it easier to tabulate the votes in a more timely manner, because it's not all on Election Day, right, and the small amount that's left over.
We had this discussion yesterday with Senator Griffo about early voting, about making it easier, about registration, et cetera.
He said he voted by mail. You said you literally, so they send you everybody did like almost absentee like in Oregon?
That's correct. It's all by U.S. mail. So you get sent a ballot a few weeks before Election Day. You have a window to submit it, and 100% of the votes are tallied that way.
Wow.
Interesting.
Griffo
and that's one of the quirks, if I could just point out for a moment. We have this system of federalism, right, from a political science perspective. It's a national election, but each of the 50 states get to determine how people actually vote. So it's quite remarkable how different states do that.
Yeah, you would think that there'd be something uniform. But Senator Griffo yesterday, Manasseh, you can come in on this too, because we were all debating this. What is the resistance? My take on it is, if you're Republican, even if you're Democrat, the system that we currently have, you know who's going to vote. By opening and making it easier, is the fear that a party can go out and grab someone who is not a traditional voter, and they don't have to register. It's easier to register, and you can bring them to the poll. What's the fear? What's the resistance?
That's an interesting question. So I guess, to be honest, I think there's two considerations. One, what's best for democracy, and then two, what's best for each political party.
Yeah.
So I think what you're getting at is best for democracy to make it as easy for people to vote as possible. And the U.S. does not do well with voter turnout compared to other democracies. We're quite low in that regard. So there's room for improvement there. I think the subtext is, and this is not at all a reflection on Senator Griffo's comments. I didn't hear what he had to say. But generally, when I think about this issue nationally, the way things work now is that Republicans are older, and older people tend to vote more. And they're also more affluent, and more affluent people tend to vote more. So the people who turn out to vote right now tend to be favorable for Republicans, whereas the people who don't vote right now, who tend to be less educated, less affluent, and younger, are predominantly Democrats. So I think the subtext, and we've seen this unfold over the last 2 years nationally, is that there's an interest in Democrats trying to expand voting so more people could vote and make it easier to do that. And I think the Republicans, again, I'm not saying this is why they're opposed, but it is in their advantage to limit the access to voting in certain ways. And we've seen different efforts in different states along those lines.
Just quickly, I just think it's funny getting back to the mail point on the mailing in your ballots in Oregon. With all the technology we have today, to have to wait a month after an election to count, it's just unbelievable. So they were hand counted, correct? Or would they be removed from envelopes and slipped into a machine in Oregon?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
It's been some time since I was there, so I'm not sure of the process. I don't want to speak to that.
At the end of the day, right, like the United County Board of Elections do a great job. Within 20 minutes, usually you've got numbers coming in. I just can't imagine in the state of Oregon.
Well, the craziest part about the mail thing is that, like, okay, so somebody sees, anybody can. I know mail is secure, and I don't want to talk about the integrity of the mail service, but I feel like a lot could go wrong with all mail ballots.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think voting machines are the way to the future, and then you have a paper copy that you feed in, so then you can verify that as well. So you get the speed of the digital, but then you also get the validity of the paper just to make sure if you need to recanvass or recount.
Ultimately, I mean, you got to think, though, that with the technology we have today, for instance, the iPhone, you cannot open up my iPhone unless you have my face. I hold the thing up to my face, and it recognizes my face, and it's accurate. It's really accurate. So you would think that down the road, sometime soon, in the not-too-distant future, we're going to have new technology and maybe a sweeping change, maybe a national change, making it something that is more of a common process around the country?
Well, I don't think it'll be uniform, again, because of our system of federalism.
Yeah.
And also, my colleagues in cybersecurity at Utica College have pointed out to me that the way the voting machines were designed now, cybersecurity was not a main concern. So I think that's the first step with electronic voting systems, to get these systems reconfigured to deal with the threats we face in terms of Russia and other countries who are trying to tamper with our elections.
Yeah.
And then I think once you get past that, then you can fine-tune how best to do this in the most user-friendly and efficient manner.
I'll just add as well, like, you're right about the technology that's available in your phone, but we talk about access to voting, and it's like racist if you say someone should have an ID to vote, because they say it, you're right. But imagine you have to have a smartphone to vote. I mean, wouldn't
you're
that
right. Yeah.
separate?
Well, I'm saying you don't need a smartphone necessarily, but maybe the technology is at the polls where there's a facial recognition. But Luke, go ahead.
Would work.
No, I think it's a good point. There's presumptions that people have access to that technology, which they don't to the same degree. And even in Oregon, if you're homeless, you don't have a mailing address to get a ballot, so you're disenfranchised there as well. So there's challenges with each system. You're always trying to make it better.
Have you ever, after an election, especially you see these in the local elections, it's like, oh my God, the people that voted, they got these people to vote, and look at how this thing turned out. You almost have, if you're in some sort of a majority or you feel your party is the proper party, you really don't want those other people who you think are idiots, by the way. You don't want the idiots voting. And I kind of think that's the concept. We've got it the way it is now. It's not perfect, but God forbid if we open this up to everybody. Just think of the morons that'll be voting. I do think that's kind of a looking down on a certain population. That is kind of what we're dealing with here.
Well, that's interesting. As a teacher, I always like to think, give people the benefit of the doubt and, try to help them learn and hold them in high regard.
You would never make it in radio. Just would never.
But, I'll also say once processes get established, we call this path dependency in political science. They're very hard to change.
Right.
Some of it, even if it's not malicious or conceded, it's just systems get put in place, and then different people come in and run them, and it's hard to make those substantive changes.
Even down to the day that we vote is old, right? I mean, the voting on Tuesday goes back to a farming community when the country was dominated by agriculture, right?
Yes, and I do think that will change. I think we've seen early voting produce higher turnout in several states now, and I think it is a matter of time, 5-10 years before the majority of states have this. Because, like we talked about before, I think there's a legitimate interest or democracy to make it as easy as possible to vote. And the United States is different than other democracies, too, in terms of voter registration. Here, citizens have to register themselves to vote, where in many democracies throughout the West, the government has responsibility to register people to vote. So there's a lot of things working against people to make it easy to vote.
In Australia, you get fined if you don't vote. It's a requirement.
Really?
Yeah.
So this is something that came up earlier this week. This is my last one, Luke, I promise. On early voting, the idea came up. It's like, okay, it's a week before the election. I vote, but then 2 days later, my candidate does something absurd, okay? And now I want to change my vote. Has this ever been brought up in the court, the early voting and the need or want to change a vote?
That's an interesting question. I'm not familiar with any relevant court cases, so that's not my expertise. I think the way you handle that is you keep the window reasonable enough to try to, hedge against that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if it's 2 months, that's one thing. If it's 2 weeks, that's another. And I think, as we've talked about in the past, we have very long campaigns here. So, by the closing stretch, voters had a pretty good idea of who they like and why, and it's not typical for that to change last minute.
Well, all I know is they took Black Friday away from me, and now they're going to try to do the same thing with Election Day.
Well, I want it off a Tuesday and in the summer.
Early Black Friday deals have just ruined that Friday
Plus,
morning.
Catholics lost Christmas. Ask President Trump.
One final thing, Luke, and I don't want to make your kids late for school. One final is the president talks about fraud that the Senate opponent there in Florida. I forget the senator's
Bill Nelson.
name. Nelson should just simply step away. He has lost. This thing's fraudulent. It's almost to the point beyond where it's not even legitimate. These are words, and I understand they're tweets, but they're coming out of the Oval Office. It's pretty unprecedented, don't you think?
I do. This is something that's troublesome to me as a political scientist who's dedicated 20 years to researching different aspects of democracy, not only in the U.S. but around the world, and has also served for the U.S. government, for the State Department in certain capacities. So we have a long tradition of free and fair elections and the peaceful transfer of power. These are defining characteristics of our popular government and have been for 200 years. I think all elected officials, but particularly the most powerful and influential ones, should be very cautious in how they communicate disappointment in regards to electoral outcomes and should do all that they can, Republican and Democrat, to maintain the integrity of our electoral system because it really is so vital.
Luke Perry, it's always a pleasure. We appreciate your insight, and we'll do this again.
Thanks so much.
All right. We'll break here. Went long, but I hate to say, but this guy, Luke Perry, knows his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it is awesome to have him at our beck and call to be able to say, hey, explain this. What do you think about this? What's your take? Luke Perry, and, of course, all of his columns, although we've kind of passed that stage, are available up on the web. Utica College Center of Public Affairs and Election Research, NY22 Minute. Coming up, our free money question of the day. Manasseh, there's an additional chance. If you didn't get through, Mike in Rome is going to be our guy. But if you're not Mike in Rome, you still have an additional chance to play and win.
Absolutely. All you have to do is take our app on your phone, open up the app. On the left-hand side, there's a drop-down menu. Click Contact Us. Email us the correct answer. You'll be in the drawing. We'll pick a winner at the end of the month. A free brake job from Oriskany Garage and Tire.
On the line right now is Mike in Rome. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
All right, here's your question. You'll have 7 seconds to get an answer in. It's worth $100 from Joseph and Andrew Hobeika, the Hobeika Law Firm, 315-724-1600. Call them when you're in trouble. I don't think that's their slogan, but I'm just telling you what I do, Mike. Trouble just seems to follow me. It's awesome. Okay, here's your question. It's history. November 22nd, 1968. This almost blank album was released. Ready, go.
We'll say Beatles White.
I'm going to go with Beatles White Album. Is it Beatles White? Beatles White Album.
Winning. Wow.
And what was actually on that album?
I do not.
Just the Beatles. The words, the Beatles.
Oh, gotcha.
That was it. Everything else was completely blank. So
the cover you're saying was
on
blank?
the cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, the record was blank?
Yeah.
There was nothing on it. White Noise.
There were a few of those, and I think those are worth a lot of money, by the way.
The White Noise album.
Michael will give you. We're going to give you a $100 in cash from the Hobico Law Firm, and I'm going to add to it. You'll also receive a jar of Riggy sauce from It's a Utica Thing, now in 6 different flavors. Marinade, as they say, original chicken Riggy, veggie Riggy, piggy Riggy, vodka Riggy, and roasted garlic Riggy sauce available at Price Chopper, Shenantries, Charlie's Pizza, Utica Pizza Company, and coming soon to Wegmans. And so $100 plus a jar of Riggy sauce.
And since we're making slogans, one for the sauce, so good, we give it consolation prize to the winner.
Okay, I love your
It
slogans.
needs work. Yeah,
boy, there's Madison Ave. There's a job waiting for you down there. There's no doubt.
Sure.
In my mind.
Shining shoes or something.
Mike, they're calling right now. As a matter of fact, Mike and Rome. Sit tight. Davey's going to hook you up.
Brilliant.
Okay? Brilliant.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, man. That was good, and I love it when somebody guesses. I don't know the White Album. The difficulty with that question is when I'll say her name was blank Pharaoh. When you say the word blank, it became a little tricky because you could perceive as I was looking for something to fill the blank, when in reality we were talking about the album cover was actually blank. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. And that was what I thought. It was a.
Speaking of Mia Farrow, by the way, it's the 50th anniversary edition of the White Album has been remastered. There's a song on the album called, here's a little clip of it, called Dear Prudence. So that audio is just pristine. Mm-hmm. This audio comes from a Letterman show in 1994 where Mia Farrow was on explaining to David Letterman that her sister was the Dear Prudence that is being referenced in the song Dear Prudence by the Beatles. Listen to this audio here.
It was the 60s, so my sister was a big meditator and is, and she said, we'll go to India and we'll look for, inner peace for you with Maharishi in the Himalayas. I thought, sounds good. So we get to India, and, 3 weeks I'm trying really hard, and, inner peace just totally eluded me. And who should arrive but the Beatles? Mm-hmm. All 4 of them. And my sister's laughing at me, saying, that's your karma, and I gave it another couple of weeks, and this just started hitchhiking, left Prudy there. She was like the all-time meditator. She wouldn't come out of her room. The Beatles wrote a song for her. John Lennon wrote a song called Dear Prudence.
No, is it really?
That's
about your sister?
Right, it's about Prudence because she wouldn't come out.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? How about that? Pretty wild.
That's amazing.
A little trivia there if you're on Jeopardy. You'll know that. Can I get into a little piece of this? Do I have time to keep going here without breaking?
Yeah.
I want to talk about this El Chapo trial.
You're
an expert.
Yeah.
I have no clue on any. I didn't follow this thing at all, except I was asked to do a report on it yesterday.
You are the correspondent.
And I got to tell you, I quickly gathered the information that I needed to know. So here's what's going on. This is actually an interesting trial, obviously, to follow. He's thought of as being the number one most evil drug lord, drug kingpin in the world.
He's a bad dude.
That's what they say. Anyway, he's being held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan. And they say, for those who are like El Chapo, this is less hospitable than Guantanamo Bay. It's really a rough place for bad dudes, as Andrew says. Anyway, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. So here's the story. So this is going to happen again today, and it happened yesterday. Traffic goes nuts. It completely creates gridlock because they have to take him from Lower Manhattan, close down all the streets, close down the Brooklyn Bridge to bring him over, which is about 2 miles, but forever, over to the courthouse in Brooklyn. And the reason they're shutting down the streets is they fear there would be an attack, and he would be rescued or escape.
I mean, that's several movies have this linked into it, right?
This is going to be...
This guy escaped through prison through a tunnel.
By the way, Netflix, search for Narcos. I believe that's the name of the series. It's awesome. Yeah. It's about El Chapo.
But what I'm saying is that if he had been able to, escape from a prison through a tunnel, he can certainly have one of his people arrange
they're not
bust out.
as worried about him, because if you saw his escape, it's actually on video. If you saw his escape, it wasn't like, you see those movies where there's the lines. What's that one movie where they were going through the laser lines? And they're like
Mission Impossible,
acrobatic, Mission Impossible. No, this guy is kind of portly. He just got up and he walked down into the tunnel. It's the people that protect him and surround him and his army, they call it. They're the ones that they're worried about. So, I mean, are they worried that somebody's going to drive into the transport vehicle, and then come out with machine guns and start firing away and rescue him? That's what they're worried about.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely.
So it's so bad right now that they're talking about actually keeping him at the courthouse and putting him in a cell at the courthouse and keeping him there Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends take him back when trial isn't underway, take him back over to the correctional facility. That's how bad it is. To get into the court, security is tighter than it is at any airport you've probably ever been to. Shoes off. Your shoes must be x-rayed. No liquids. You're searched. Then you're searched again by dogs, drug-sniffing, bomb-sniffing, gun-sniffing dogs. Then you're x-rayed, and then you're able to go in. Once you get in, you cannot leave. If you're even a reporter, say you need to go to the bathroom.
Have a cigarette.
Nature has called. A cigarette is needed. You can't. And if you do. If you
no re-entry,
you cannot leave to go to the bathroom. If you do, they will not hold your place. You're out.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how. I mean, they don't want anyone coming in and leaving. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yesterday, everything got delayed because 2 jurors were having panic attacks, and their health was at risk because they're fearing that they'll be killed.
Yeah, imagine you get that. You're on that jury. No thanks.
It's so bad they're concealing the identities of the jurors, but you don't trust that completely. And 2 of these jurors had to be replaced yesterday because they were panicking, the anxiety. It was causing a health risk, so they were replaced. In opening arguments for the prosecution, they painted El Chapo as a ruthless murderer who would stop at nothing to protect his position, even killing family members. Now, the defense came out and said none of this is true. El Chapo is just a guy. This is all BS. I think that's how he was delivering it. This is BS. They're saying that the real drug kingpin is a guy named Ismael Almayo Zambada, who El Chapo's just doing what he's told. He's not the big guy. Now, the government is...
They flipped El Chapo?
They're saying the government is using Zambada and his people as informants, et cetera, that they're the ones that have basically not only but turned him in, but are testifying against him. And what the defense is saying is, you got the wrong guy here. This is the guy you should be going after. So whether you believe any of that or not, they're saying that the feds have been bought off by El Mayo Zambada. Anyway, anything else? I guess that's all I have on it. But it's crazy. And it goes back on today. You're going to see video today of them going into his cell, bringing him out, putting him in this armored vehicle, and shutting down the Brooklyn Bridge and streets along the way to get him back into the courthouse. And, oh, by the way, he has a wife who looks like Kim Kardashian.
Hey.
I'm just saying. Got a break at WIBX. A newspaper out of New Zealand called the Gisborne Herald had headlines on the front page about Stan Lee's passing. And, of course, as did newspapers all across the world, throughout the world. They made a slight little mistake. They had a picture of Stan Lee. Talks about his death at the age of 95. But instead of writing Stan Lee, they printed in big, bold, all caps block letters, Spike Lee, dead at the age of 95.
Ooh.
Wow.
And I believe that Spike Lee might have responded to the tweets that were all over the Internet, all over Twitter yesterday because of that. Spike Lee is still alive. Stan Lee, however, is dead at the age of 95. Shonda Cortines is a shopping expert, And standing by on the line right now, Shonda, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Black Friday. I'm not doing well. I'm just very nervous. Very, very nervous. So,
don't be nervous.
My first thing is, though, I have to tell you, it's completely changing Thanksgiving dinner. Like, we have our nephews and my son are going to have to leave early because they have work at 5 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mandatory. Yeah. There's no, hey, I got this little thing Thanksgiving, but you got to go.
See, that's surprising to me because, like, some of the big retailers, like, for example, JCPenney, for JCPenney, it is voluntary. They pay, and a lot of people are volunteering because they pay really well that day.
Yeah.
So mandatory, I'm not real crazy about that. So
something we talked about earlier this week was like Black Friday's kind of going away. Everyone's launching really early deals and sales online.
Yeah. So what's going on? I mean,
it really is. It really is. I feel like these sales literally start before Halloween now. It's kind of comical, but. The main thing is to navigate, try to take advantage of them when they come. There are some that are going on now. There's TVs at Walmart.com for $2.99. There's a deal at JCPenney, for example, that ends tonight. For every $100 purchase, regular price purchase that you spend, you get 60% off.
Wow!
So that $100 is going to cost you $40. TJ Maxx online is free shipping all day today. There's so really you can kind of navigate and start early and don't stress yourself out. I mean, there's really no reason, in my opinion, to even get in a long line on Black Friday, but, to each their own. Some people, love that.
Well, that's the thing. I think there are families, and I've done this. I've done this one time, and it was nuts. I mean, especially when, I'm not a tall guy. Some of these women are huge, okay, and they mean business.
Yeah, they do.
They'll knock you to the ground and drag their stroller right over top of your face. It's terrible.
Yes, they will, and I've been there, done that many times.
But you've rolled somebody over with a stroller, Shonda?
But there are those families that this is tradition. They're up at 2 o'clock in the morning or at midnight. I mean, they're out waiting in lines, and we're kind of taking that away from them.
And it's, the sad part is it's like it's a bonding thing. So, I mean, I feel bad for the retailers, but at the same time, these families are really bonding this way.
Yeah.
Do you think it originated with, this store decided, well, hey, we're going to open a little earlier, and
she's gone.
She didn't want to have anything to do with my question.
You apparently offended the daylights out of her.
When I accused her of rolling somebody over with a stroller.
Is she on some limit thing? It's like we went too far with her or something, too long?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Was it the sexual question we asked her?
Did we ask
the
her
inappropriate?
a sexual question?
I don't think we did.
No.
I don't think there was anything inappropriate.
Anyway.
Hey, what's your question? I'll answer it.
Well, no, I was going to say these stores, one store's like, we're going to open in, a couple hours earlier. And then this store is like, well, I'm going to open 3 hours earlier. And then next thing we know, we're shopping on Thanksgiving.
You don't have to go back that far. And that's actually what happened. Everyone was looking to be the first one in.
It was one. Was it Wal? Who was the first one to do it?
It might have been a Walmart.
Yeah.
But it was somebody where it was
Kohl's
like,
or something.
Open on Black Friday at 8, 7, 6, 4. And then all of a sudden it was like, we're open Thursday night at 10. It
even started where they're opening at midnight. Remember?
Yeah.
Probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was like, we're all going out tonight because some of the stores, because people would start lining up at midnight.
People would sleep out.
Sleep outside
out.
for the stores that would open at 5 a.m. So then probably somebody was like, well, you got all these people here. Why don't we'll just open?
Yeah.
We'll just open and offer some deals.
They're dying to spend money. Open the door.
Hey, they're open over there.
Before they go into JCPenney, Target said, let's steal them out of we're going to take them right out of line. These people all have money in their pockets.
Yeah.
So then one up to one on this one, one ups that one. All of a sudden now, I guess the everybody opens at 6, right? So employees have to report at 5. And there's a good chance that our kids are probably telling us it's mandatory. But we find out they're making triple time or something. Yeah. And, of course, they want to make the money. But that's tough. Because I'll tell you something. There are times coordinating family and getting everybody together we wouldn't start a Thanksgiving meal until 4 o'clock.
Sure.
Can't do that anymore.
And you want to have a little bit of cocktailing going on before the dinner. You don't want to be showing up to work.
What are you going to do?
Inebriated. Happy 12:50.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm buying a candy bar. I know.
You know, Andrew, not everyone drinks with every meal.
That's true. Doctors say 1 glass of wine
per meal.
Per meal. Oh, per meal? I thought per every bite of food.
I
Sorry.
believe it's,
Oh, man.
per every bite. Anyway, it's
Well,
changed. And I do wonder how far we're going to go with it. Is there going to come a point where somebody's like, listen, we're just going to be open all day long. So in between your cranberry sauce and your stuffing, just take a little jaunt over to Walmart, and we'll save you some dough.
You know, the best deals really are January deals, right? So
they really are.
Prep for the next season. Get out there 11 months early, and
I used to always surprise my wife at Christmas time with a gift for myself. It would be a trip to Victoria's Secret, and I'd buy a whole big box of all these things for my wife. She would then put them in a little. I'm like, you're not going to wear this stuff? I mean, where's my gift? And she would then return every item, and she'd get it all for like a quarter of the price after the first of the year. And they hold their big sales. You bring it all back, and then...
Oh, so you just had to wait for your gift till after Christmas.
Yes, yeah. But by January, it's too cold to be even thinking about that crap. 8:21, hold on, we'll come back here. I have some tickets to give away to the Dennis Miller Show. And that's coming up right after the first of the year. I think February, right?
February, yeah.
It'll be at the On Center in Syracuse, and we have a pair of tickets to give away. We'll play the music game. If you'd like tickets to see Dennis Miller, I have a pair to give away, Davey. Let's take caller number 4, and we're going to play the music game. All right, 315-736-0186. Caller 4 right now at WIBX. Congratulations, Joe Marie. You won a pair of tickets to see Mark Stein and the legendary Dennis Miller at the On Center in Syracuse coming up in February.
And you should be excited about that because the consolation prize was another term on the council.
Yeah,
so.
And about 2 more of those songs your way.
All right.
You guys.
Davey, hook him up, okay? All right.
No, Davey, do not hook me up.
No, Davey, hook him
Save
up.
those tickets for some. No.
Hook him up, Davey.
Good morning, Joe.
Oh, Joe.
Good morning, boys. How are you?
All right. So you recently sent a letter to Utica's Public Safety Commissioner, who just so happens to be a man by the name of Robert Palmieri, who also just so happens to be the mayor of the city.
That sounded familiar.
And what's your gripe when it comes to the fire department? What's this all about? What are you upset about?
Yeah, I'm not upset, and I'm not even, the letter wasn't even to take the mayor to task or to be critical. It's to stand up for, just the overreach of power. So what happened was...
Well, that would be critical. I mean, if you're talking about his overreach, that's critical.
That's not the... but that's not the main objective. The objective isn't to be critical. The objective is to return, some balance into the city government. So what happened was the mayor had reappointed one of his old firefighters to a position, and it was to reinstate former Assistant Chief George Clark. By reinstating a guy that had retired, and this is the butterfly effect of all what happened from the unceremonious leave of Russell Brooks, and now we've had 5 chiefs since. The department is in kind of flux with who can get an appointment, who can get a promotion.
Sword fighting going on. I mean, sword fighting.
Well, look, it's certainly not. It's not the most becoming department that it had been in the past. I mean, that's for sure, and it's not indicative of the entire department. But what happens is these kind of things get way out of control, and this time the mayor is actually in violation of the city charter, civil service law for the state, and second-class cities law by way of him reinstating a position.
So where did George Clark get reinstated? Explain what happened here. Was this when he came in on an interim basis?
Yeah, well, he was reinstated back to his former position of assistant chief.
Right.
But since there is a provisional chief on staff, that means that job title has to remain open. So by that job, because if, for instance, the provisional chief is Scott Ingersoll. Scott Ingersoll, if anything happens and he needs to go back to his title, it needs to remain open according to civil service law.
Okay.
With the mayor reinstating George Clark, he's effectively increased the complement of the fire department by 1 person, and only a governing body is allowed to do that, not the public safety commissioner and certainly not the mayor. So what I did was I let him know that I'd like him to rescind his reinstatement immediately and not wait until the civil service gave him until, I believe, the 21st of November. But again, it's causing a little bit of disarray in the fire department, and now he's overreached his actual authority.
So he's being told that he has to, by civil service, that he has to rescind that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the New York State Civil Service Department has written him a letter, and they've written the fire department a letter showing that they're inaccurate in the fact that he cannot reinstate. Could George Clark be reinstated by the who would, and if so, who would be eligible to do that? I mean, if he were reinstated, the Common Council would have to go in, vote by way of a local law to increase the complement of the fire department.
Got it. So
what the mayor
added a
could
position.
What the mayor could do is the mayor could temporarily have him back on. Meaning, so reinstatement and temporary appointment are two different things.
Okay.
So you've seen recently Jim Barefoot was temporarily appointed to the chief of the fire department. But if you temporarily appoint an assistant chief or anyone below a chief, that now becomes a union job. And since George Clark is retired, if the mayor chooses to go from a reinstatement to a temporary appointment, which would be legal under civil service law, but what you'll be doing is effectively hiring scab labor, or someone, working in a union position that isn't in the union any longer.
So is the union up in arms about this?
They are, and I believe that if the Civil Service Commission and the mayor do decide to go temporary, there will be an automatic lawsuit and a grievance from the union. So again, these things, Bill, they're causing us lawsuits. They're costing us money. I don't know where exactly that risk management firm is that the mayor hired at $250,000 over the last 4 years. I mean, they're certainly not preventing any of these kind of violations from happening. And so my letter to the mayor was just stay out of these instances that you have no clue on how to handle them, and hire a professional public safety commissioner. It's clear that, politics has been infiltrating these decisions. And what they're doing is you're essentially, by bringing all these people back, you're telling everyone in the fire department, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You're not capable of having this promotion. So I'm going to bring back somebody that I used to have with me on my side before. And that's just not right for them either. So for me, like I said in the beginning, it's not to criticize. I mean, that obviously is critical, but that's not the point. The point is to stand up for these guys when clearly no one else will.
How would the process go forward if the mayor decided, you know what, okay, I can't reinstate him, then fine. I'm going to make him public safety commissioner, George Clark. Could the mayor do that, or is that out of his hands? Would the Common Council have to approve that? Does he nominate? How does that work?
Do you want my opinion, or do you want factually how government works?
Well, I really would like the factual stuff.
I'll give you my opinion first is that if the mayor, I don't believe, is capable of relinquishing that power. That's my opinion. I don't believe that he's even capable of hiring someone for that job. But governmentally, of course, he can have anyone. He can have you or Jeff Manaske or Andrew Dominio or
I'd make a great public service commissioner.
It's an appointed position,
I think you'd make some sound decisions, to be honest with you.
And that comes with a salary. So does the mayor get that salary? Is the mayor being paid to be public safety commissioner, or is he saving, saving the city money?
And that's the trick. The trick is that the mayor goes out and says, well, I'm saving the city money.
Right.
I'm saving the salary of this position. But for the $70,000 or $80,000 that you would even pay a professional who knows these jobs and who can insulate political decisions, that would save you an enormous amount of money in liability, insurance, and lawsuit claims. I mean, as it is now, Chief Brooks' salary has been paid while there's been a court case. It's cost us, this whole fire department debacle, and I haven't had the time to figure out the actual numbers, it's cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And I have to tell you something. Since the John Kelly story, and that was the story that there was allegations by a young recruit that there was porn and there was sword fighting going on, which is just, when you find out what that is, it's really quite disgusting. But all this stuff was going on. Since that time, the mayor has not come on the radio with us and has refused to come on the air with us since that story
and
broke.
That's another thing. I mean, look, when you're the leader of a city our size and you have access to people like yourselves or radio programs or interviews, and that's all you do, is go out. His legacy, Bill, is going to be to cut ribbons and hide when controversy hits and not lead when it's time to.
So
that's the thing that bothers me the most.
Specifically, I want to ask about this. So I keep hearing about on the issue of John Kelly and the young man that was the recruit who was he was above 18. I think he was in his early 20s. But I keep hearing, well, he was of age. He was a willing participant. That is the dumbest argument I've ever heard in my life, because you have a chief a deputy chief that is putting the city in jeopardy. A. B. There's policy where you don't come in and do sword fighting in the firehouse. You don't bring people in to watch porn. There have been issues in the past where strippers or prostitutes have been brought in. Not implying that was the case here in the Kelly story, but that's the issue. It's not whether this young kid was a willing participant. The issue is, how do you allow that behavior to occur at the fire department? So with that said, my question to you is, if you let John Kelly get off in the way that he was able to get off, there was a slight punishment, I believe. If you allow that to happen, what precedent are you setting when another firefighter does something wrong? Or in the case of that case where the fire pants, where stuff was hot, doesn't that change how you can punish for that alleged incident? I mean, aren't you setting a very dangerous precedent now that is going to be long-lasting, not just in this individual case with Kelly?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the issue, is that this mayor has gone unchecked for 8 years. And he's had the very, very, very fortunate circumstance of being in the right place at the right time, as I have as well. Being on the council in this time when the city is turning around what I believe is organically, and, look, we've, as a government, helped as much as we could, but this mayor has gone unchecked, and I certainly don't mean by the media or the news organizations. I mean by the Common Council itself. I mean that there are things that we could do to, overturn these things, or even put a resolution in, even if it's innocuous, and we just say that our displeasure and how all these things are being handled, or demand that a mayor come to one of our public meetings that are recorded and question as to why he's made these decisions. Maybe there's a good reason. Maybe there's a great reason why he's letting, it's way beyond sophomoric behavior. Yeah. It's deviant behavior. And, I just don't understand why these kind of things happen. But again, look, he's afraid of the voters. He's turned around, referendum after referendum. He's looked to, not talk to people. He's radio silent when things happen. But I challenge him in each of these letters that I write to at least respond as to why in the world you do these things. So, but again, at the end of it all, Bill, I mean it sincerely. These men and women of the fire department are some of the best and brightest on the planet, and these guys have absolutely zero opportunity for advancement and promotion under this current administration.
Well, it is a shame that it's true. The firefighters, the fire department, probably an overwhelming majority are really looking at this saying, this makes us all look so bad. That this is not what this fire department is, and that is the big shame. There's no doubt about it. All right, Joe, interesting.
Bill, thank you, and thanks for the game in the beginning. It was nice to have a laugh. I really appreciate it.
I don't know what was so funny. I mean, I just we're throwing songs out there. You won the ticket.
I'll be honest with you. You're going to hang up and think that I'm not really that versed. I actually am proud of myself, if I'm being honest. I did really, really well.
You did.
You did too.
Yeah, you did very, very well. I don't know on what planet, but you did very well. You did. You honestly did. All right,
Boy,
Joe.
Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
Bill,
I
appreciate it.
Okay. You have a great day. Thank you, man. Ryan Noble standing by right now from CNN. Good morning, Ryan.
Hey, Bill. Good morning. It sounds like it's cold in upstate New York.
It's terrible. It's cold. I ran out to grab something from my car. I almost ended up right on my rear end. It's slick out there, and it's wintertime. Yep.
It was like rainy and 60 here in Tallahassee yesterday, so you should really feel bad for me.
Well, to be honest with you, when you're in a place like Tallahassee, you would expect it to be a little warmer than that. So, yeah.
And considering I only expected to be here for 3 days, I don't really have enough gear to have been here now going on 9 days and possibly until Thanksgiving.
So are you?
I thought you were wearing the same suit a little bit too frequently.
Are you in the midst of? Are you in Are you in the midst of the recount debacle going on down there? And
I'm swimming in it. Yes.
And is it a debacle? The president saying it's so bad now we might as well have another election, which I find unprecedented coming from the president of the United States.
Bill, I'm so glad you asked me that question because I do think the perception around the rest of the country is that Florida's really massively screwed up this election, and I don't think there's really evidence of that. I think what happened here is that this is a massive state, right? It's, in fact, one of the counties that's having all the problems. One of my colleagues pointed this statement out yesterday. Broward County, which is the second largest county in Florida, it is the spot where they're having the hardest time counting the ballots, essentially, Broward and Palm Beach County. But Broward County, if it were a state unto itself, would be the 37th largest state in the United States. Florida is a mini country.
Yeah.
So the idea that counting 8.5 million ballots in a short period of time is an easy idea, I think, is a fallacy. And here's the thing. This was an extraordinary close election. It ended up, the Senate race right now, the separation is only 12,000 votes out of 8.5 million votes. That's 0.14%. So, yeah, this is going to take a little bit of time to make sure they got it right. But Florida's really improved things since the 2000 presidential election. They've got better machines. They've improved their ballot design. They've got a system in place and clear rules for this process. The reason that there's controversy around this is because Democrats and Republicans are fighting over the rules.
Right.
And Democrats would like to really change some of them so that some of these votes that were rejected during the counting process can be brought in. So I don't think it's as bad as everybody is making it out to be. I just think that this is a big state, and this was a super close election.
So Rick Scott is saying on the Sunday programs over the weekend, saying that, there's fraud. And the fraud is that there are attorneys for his opponent that are coming out and saying, you could be a non-American citizen and your vote should be able to count. Yeah. Is that true? And are the Democrats trying to allow that to happen? Because that seems pretty unprecedented.
So this is what the Scott campaign is complaining about. So the way that this process works is that there are ballots that, when they're cast, have some sort of problem associated with them. They're torn. The dots are not necessarily filled in completely. The voters who cast the ballots didn't necessarily have the proper ID when they cast them. There's a variety of reasons these ballots get set aside. They're called provisional ballots. The provisional ballots go in front of canvassing boards in each one of these counties, and the canvassing boards determine whether or not the vote should count.
And the criteria used, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's for them to determine what was the voter's intent.
Right, exactly, and that the voter is legally able to vote,
right,
which is part of what this controversy is about. So there were a group of votes in I don't remember which county it was, but the Scott campaign contends that they were votes cast by non-citizens, and the Nelson campaign contends that we don't know for sure.
Right.
So the Nelson campaign said, no, I think we need to set these aside and do our best to get a hold of the people who cast these ballots so that we can definitively determine whether or not they're American citizens or not. And the Scott campaign has taken that particular squabble at a canvassing board and turned it into this thing that they were asking thousands and thousands of non-citizens to vote. And that's not the case. Now, the Nelson campaign certainly was attempting to do everything they could to get those ballots counted, and they may have been from non-citizens, but that's also part of the process, right? That's the job of the canvassing board, to adjudicate these decisions.
Right.
And both sides are doing this. They're taking little tiny instances of problems and magnifying them to make them look like they're the good guys and the other guys are the bad guys.
You're shaking your head, Manaski, and I believe exactly what Brian says. This could benefit. There are votes that are screwed up that you can determine the intent and dig in to see if it's a legitimate vote. That could benefit both sides. Why are you?
I'm shaking my head. It sounds, I don't want to say foreign, but because we're talking about whether or not people are citizens, it sounds foreign to me that you would go into a ballot box and call me up on the phone and go, Jeff, hey, we just want to make sure. Did you vote for candidate A or candidate B?
No,
to me, that's kind of
Jeff,
intrusive.
You misunderstand that.
That's
okay.
That's
not how it works.
They're trying to figure out if these people are
I'm
citizens.
saying if that's what Rick Scott wants to do, I'm saying that's ridiculous. I wasn't disagreeing with Ryan. I was saying it was absurd to go through that process. But go ahead and explain it.
No. So these provisional ballots they've been set aside before they've been counted. So they're under seal. We don't know who the person voted for. So before they even get opened and cast, the decision has to be made whether or not they're a valid vote. So the reason that, this was the exact opposite situation in Arizona. The reason that Democrats are fighting for every possible vote to get in, and Republicans are fighting for every possible vote not to get in, is because Republicans are winning and Democrats are losing.
Right.
In Arizona, they were having the exact opposite argument. Democrats were ahead, and the same lawyer, Mark Elias, who's in charge of the legal maneuverings here for the Nelson team in Florida, was saying, no, you shouldn't let this batch of votes in because they want to expand the pool of voters with the long shot chance that there's more votes for their candidate.
Yeah, I see this. Believe me, this is talking about both sides of their because in one race they're arguing for all these ballots to be included. In another race, they're arguing against it. Both sides are in the midst of all of this. But at the end of the day, if a person intended to vote a certain way and might have made a mistake which would preliminarily disqualify that vote, if you can go in and look at that ballot and see, well, clearly they intended to vote for this person, then I think that vote should count.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that most of the election supervisors in Florida feel the same way, Bill, whether they're Republican or Democrat, whether it's a red county or blue county. I had a very long conversation with the election supervisor here in Leon County, which is where Tallahassee is. They haven't had any problems. This guy.
Oh, no.
Well, that I don't know why it happened, but
do we have a phone issue today?
No, because that's his private phone, but that's the second time that has happened to us today.
Can you try right back?
It might be. I don't know.
Because that's how we lost the other guest. Okay, so while we're waiting here, can I clarify one point? And I'll ask Ryan when he comes back on. The other reason I was shaking my head is the idea, I guess personally, I'm not in favor of non-citizens voting, okay? But the idea
I don't think non-citizens can vote.
This is part of the issue.
Now, they might vote, and if you determine afterwards that person is a non-citizen, that vote should be disqualified.
Right. So, but what Ryan
But don't disqualify it without knowing, I think, is what's...
Yeah. But the process he was outlining, though, is like tracking down the people to verify if they actually voted. And I guess... Ryan made the point about Broward County's would be the 37th largest state. Imagine having to call every person in a state and say, "Did you actually vote?" And what if the person doesn't answer the phone? What if they're on vacation?
How many of these votes? I think if I vote and you're going to disqualify my vote, I don't think you get contacted in New York State. I don't think
you don't.
I don't know, Bill. Do you hear me? I'm back.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so I don't know what the rules are in New York State. It's been a while, but in Florida they have what's called a curing process.
Mm-hmm.
So if your vote for some reason doesn't work, and this only happens if you're an absentee voter, basically, because at the actual voting location, if there's a problem with your vote, they adjudicate it right there. They say, okay, well, let's figure out what the problem is, and we'll make sure that your intent is correct. This is basically a problem with absentee ballots, and there were 2.5 million absentee ballots in the Florida election.
Wow!
So if there's some sort of problem, they have a curing process. So they set the ballot aside. They call it a provisional ballot, and then they do contact you. You get an email, a phone call, whatever your preferred method of contact is, and they say to you, "Listen, we got your vote. There's a problem with it. You need to come down to the election board and do the process they call cure, which means." For instance, the lawsuit that they're going to hear today is about their signature match law. Your signature on the ballot has got to match your signature on your voter registration form. If there's some dramatic problem with that, they tell you to cure it, and you come down, prove that it's you, and then they solve that problem. So that there is a problem. So, but I think what Jeff's point is, it's not like you have to call 8.5 million people, right?
Right. That was my concern, because this would take until February.
Yeah, it could end up being, over all of Florida, it's probably still a lot of votes. They probably had to cure somewhere in the range of 100,000 votes, but spread out among 67 counties, the numbers continue to fall down. And, there is they do, the election supervisor I was talking about before we got cut off is, he tells me that, the lion's share of these votes that have a problem, as Bill was pointing out, they are liberal in their discernment as to whether or not who the person was voting for. They give them the benefit of the doubt. And B, they take really big steps to make sure that the person's a ballot can be cured and that they get it in on time. And we're talking about, of all the provisional ballots that are set aside, it's somewhere in the range of like 1.5% that don't actually get counted. So the number's not huge, but in a race with a 12,000 vote margin, it becomes important.
Well, it'll be interesting to see when we talk to you next week if we have an answer, a winner in place. We will see.
Probably
Ryan,
not here.
thank you so much. We'll do it again next week,
guys,
man.
have a good one.
All right.
All right, bye.
Got a break. We're back here tomorrow morning.